The email landed in Keanu Reeves' inbox at 6:38 a.m. on a chilly Monday morning, marked red and labeled urgent. The subject line was straightforward: conduct issue, immediate review required. He paused mid-sip of his espresso and opened it without hesitation. It was from his HR director, concerning store 247 and employee Lena Brooks. The message detailed multiple customer complaints, a pattern of tardiness, unprofessional demeanor, visible fatigue, and discomforting interactions with customers. The recommendation was disciplinary action, either a warning or termination. Keanu leaned back in his chair, contemplating. Store 247 was situated in a challenging neighborhood on the south side, characterized by a low-income demographic and aging infrastructure. Yet, it boasted one of the most consistent performance records among all Harvest Home grocery locations. This wasn't the first employee complaint he had encountered, but something about this one felt off. He scrolled through the attached incident reports. The language was formal, noting that Lena appeared disengaged, seemed to be falling asleep, and didn't smile when greeted. However, there were no mentions of theft, profanity, or direct complaints to corporate, just tiredness. Keanu frowned. Tiredness alone wasn't misconduct. He reflected on the values he had established for Harvest Home: respect, dignity, and fairness in every aisle, every store, every community. His instincts told him something deeper was at play. He picked up his phone and called his assistant. "Hey, Jill, cancel my meetings for the rest of the week." She didn't ask why. "Which store?" 247, I want to go in as a temp." There was a slight pause, followed by a soft chuckle. "Going incognito again, huh?" "You know it," Keanu replied, already envisioning the uniform and name tag. "Set it up. First shift starts Thursday." On that Thursday, Keanu stood outside store 247, dressed in a Navy Harvest Home polo and a borrowed name tag that read Kenny. The building was sandwiched between a dollar store and an old laundromat, looking worn but clean, just as he remembered. Inside, the floor tiles were scuffed from years of use, but the aroma of fresh bread from the in-house bakery was oddly comforting. Behind the customer service desk stood a man with tired eyes and a clipboard. "You the new guy from corporate?" he asked, not bothering to hide his disdain. "Yeah, Kenny. Here to help for the week. Name's Derek Mason." He handed Keanu a roster and pointed toward the back. "We've been short-staffed. Some folks think working is optional, especially that one." He gestured toward Register 3, where a young black woman with pulled-back curls and a wary expression was scanning groceries for a middle-aged customer. "That's Lena Brooks," Derek muttered. "She's been slipping. Always looks like she hasn't slept. I've got 3 write-ups on her desk already. One more, and HR pulls the plug. If you ask me, she's either on something or just lazy." Keanu didn't respond. He observed her from across the store. Her name tag was straight, the uniform clean, but her posture was slouched yet intentional. When the customer struggled with her bag, Lena stepped around the counter to assist, smiling softly and even offering to walk the cart outside. That didn't look like laziness, it looked like someone exhausted yet still trying. Over the next few hours, Keanu swept aisles, restocked cereal boxes, and quietly observed. He spoke just enough to blend in but kept his focus on the store's flow. The team was solid, their spirits were middling. Derek clearly ruled with an iron fist, but Lena stood out, not for slacking off, but for moving like someone carrying an invisible weight. She double-checked every receipt, helped a man find the cheapest peanut butter without being asked, and didn't engage in jokes or touch the free employee snacks in the break room. At exactly 1:15 p.m., Lena took her break. Instead of heading to the back, she sat on a stool beside the supply closet, staring blankly at her phone. She didn't eat or drink, she just sat there. 10 minutes later, she stared, checked her ponytail in a dusty mirror, and returned to her register. Keanu noticed something else. Every time her line grew long, other employees rolled their eyes, some whispered, and a few laughed. "She's about to fall asleep again," one said near the refrigerated section. "Hope Derek finally cans her." That didn't sit well with him either. At 3 p.m., the store's card reader system glitched, causing payment lines to grow. A man in a pressed seat grew agitated when his transaction stalled. "What's the matter with you people? Don't you know how to run a store?" Lena looked up at him, calm and level. "I'm sorry, sir. It's just the system. We're working on it." "I don't have time for this," he barked. Then something extraordinary happened. Lena reached into her pocket, pulled out a crumpled $20 bill, and said, "Totals $184.70. Please just take this. I want to. Make sure you get what you need." The man blinked, his anger draining away. "I can't take your money." "It's okay," Lena said almost in a whisper. "Really?" Keanu couldn't move. The image of a cashier too tired to speak above a whisper, handing over what might be her last $20 to help someone who just yelled at her, burned itself into his mind. In that moment, Keanu knew this wasn't about poor performance or policy violations. Something much deeper was going on, and he was determined to find out exactly what. Keanu stood frozen for a beat after the seated man left, groceries in hand and pride slightly rattled. The register light blinked, signaling the next customer in line, but he couldn't stop replaying what he had just witnessed. Lena didn't just give away money, she gave away dignity, quietly and without fanfare, as if it were the most natural response to someone else's anger. She hadn't sought credit or sympathy, she just helped and moved on. That disturbed him more than if she had broken down. Someone so accustomed to giving away pieces of themselves, emotionally or financially, was likely doing it all the time. He spent the rest of the afternoon watching her like a quiet sentinel, hiding behind cleaning duties and shelf restocking. Lena didn't waver, her movements were slow but methodical. Every action was measured, helping a child pick out cereal, explaining a sale to a man who didn't speak much English, holding the door open for a woman with a walker. But every few minutes, Keanu noticed something else. She pressed her palm gently against her stomach, not like someone nursing a cramp, but like someone trying to silence hunger. Not once did she go to the break room, not once did she nibble on the snack bin like the others. When her shift ended, Keanu clocked out a few minutes early and waited by the side lot under the pretense of checking his phone. One by one, employees filtered out, some joking, some griping, most heading toward the employee parking lot. But Lena walked past the side exit, past the lot, down the sidewalk with her thin jacket pulled tight. Keanu hesitated, then followed at a safe distance. Maybe it was noisy, maybe it was over the line, but something inside him, a voice he hadn't heard in years, said, "Don't let this go." The walk stretched 10 blocks, then 12. The stores grew sparser, the sidewalks rougher, with broken windows and graffiti. Lena didn't glance back, she just kept moving with determined slowness. At block 15, she turned down a side street with a busted streetlight and disappeared into an old brick apartment building with peeling paint and a front buzzer that didn't buzz. Keanu stopped across the street behind a parked van, waiting. Moments later, the hallway light flickered inside, followed by the sound that stopped him cold, a chorus of small voices shouting, "Lena." The door opened, and 3 kids ran out, hugging her legs, a girl, maybe 10, with braids bouncing, a boy, coughing and clutching a blanket, and a smaller child who didn't say a word, just wrapped both arms around her waist as if he hadn't seen her in years. From his spot across the street, Keanu watched through a half-cracked window as Lena knelt to greet them, her body bent, her voice low. She smiled, but it was the kind of smile you wear for your little brother when you're holding back a tidal wave. The girl chatted non-stop, waving papers in the air, homework, maybe. The boy rubbed his chest, and Lena reached up to press a hand to his forehead, worry etched on her face. He saw her mouth the words, "Did you eat?" The little one nodded, and the girl said something, prompting Lena to nod again, but this time slower. Then she hugged them all at once, as if it were the only thing holding her upright. Inside the apartment, it was modest, 2 rooms, maybe 3. Keanu watched as she helped the girl with a math worksheet, checked the boy's temperature, and poured water into 3 mismatched plastic cups. She opened the fridge once. Even from a distance, he could see it wasn't full, not even close. A jug of milk, a half-empty jar of peanut butter, some bread, that was it. She made sandwiches, carefully slicing 1 piece of bread into thirds. The kids ate fast, no complaints. She didn't eat. She waited, smiled, asked questions, wiped noses, and when it was done, she took what was left on the youngest child's plate, a crust, and nibbled it like it was enough. Keanu stayed until the hallway lights went out, until the kids curled up on a couch under one blanket, and Lena disappeared into the bathroom, probably to splash cold water on her face and pretend she could do it all again tomorrow. Back at his rental, Keanu didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling for hours, thinking about everything he had just seen. This wasn't burnout. This wasn't laziness. This was a 19-year-old kid raising 3 others and working herself to the bone to keep the lights on, and no one at corporate knew. No one cared, they just wanted her. Off the floor. The next morning, Keanu arrived early, before sunrise. He restocked shelves with the night crew and sipped burnt break room coffee while the manager made his rounds. Derek, still clutching his clipboard like a badge of power, was already grumbling about Lena. Undocumenting everything today, he whispered to Keanu. "One more slip, and she's gone. HR is just waiting on my signal." Keanu said nothing, but inside, something heavy settled. He wasn't just observing anymore. He was standing in the middle of a story that could decide whether a family stayed together or got torn apart. He just didn't realize yet how close they were to losing everything. Keanu had seen enough to know the story didn't end at the register, but what he hadn't yet seen was how much of Lena's world was being held together by sheer willpower and how close she was to losing it all. That morning at store 247, she walked in exactly on time, not late, as Derek had claimed in his notes. Not disheveled, her polo shirt was pressed, her name tag perfectly aligned, and her shoes, worn at the heel, were clean. But her eyes were heavy, her posture slouched deeper than the day before, and the way she moved wasn't sluggish anymore. It was mechanical, as if her body had stopped asking for rest and was now just surviving on habit. While the others grabbed hot coffee and microwaved breakfast sandwiches from the break room, Lena quietly slipped into the employee bathroom and returned 10 minutes later, her face damp as if she had splashed water on herself to stay awake. Again, she ate nothing. Again, she drank only from the hallway fountain. Keanu pretended to wipe down produce bins, but his eyes never left her. At 11 a.m., employees were entitled to their free shift meal. Most clocked out in pairs, grabbing hot deli trays or sandwiches from the staff fridge, but Lena stayed put, waving off a fellow cashier who offered to cover her lane. "Aren't you hungry?" the girl asked. "I'm okay," Lena replied softly, placing a small stack of coupons into a side drawer. Maybe later. But later never came. By 1:30 p.m., she had scanned nearly 140 customers without pause. Her fingers were slow now, her shoulders hunched forward like someone bracing against the wind. Still, she greeted every customer with that same soft, distant voice. But Keanu broke. It wasn't the exhaustion on her face, it was the way she kept pressing a hand to her stomach subtly when she thought no one was looking. Not a stretch, not an ache, just quiet pressure, the way a hungry person tries to silence their body's protests. He remembered what she had done with that $20 bill, the crust she had eaten from her brother's plate. This wasn't neglect, this was sacrifice, repeated daily, quietly, invisibly. Around 2:55 p.m., when foot traffic slowed to its afternoon lull, it happened again. Keanu watched from the canned goods aisle as Lena leaned lightly on her register, her eyelids fluttering. She didn't fully fall asleep. She just nodded forward once, then jerked herself awake. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her scanner, eyes darting around to see if anyone had noticed. Her phone buzzed on the shelf beside her. She glanced at it quickly, then froze, her face pale and already drained of the little color it had left. Keanu was close enough to read the screen as she held it below the counter. "Malik has a fever. When are you coming home?" Lena typed back quickly, 2 more hours. "Give him the children's Tylenol. I'll be there as soon as I can." Keanu clenched his jaw. Malik, that was the boy who had been coughing last night, the one who clung to her when she walked in the door. If that child was sick and she was still here, pushing through a full shift without food or rest, then this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about holding on to control, because the second she looked like she couldn't handle things, someone might decide she wasn't fit to keep her siblings. He needed answers, real ones. That evening, instead of following her home, Keanu parked 2 blocks away from the Riverside nursing facility. He had a hunch, and it paid off. At 11:30 p.m., a figure in light blue scrubs walked through the employee entrance. Same sneakers, same gait. It was Lena. She hadn't gone home to sleep. She had gone straight to her second job. Keanu stayed parked until dawn. At exactly 6 a.m., she emerged in street clothes and walked briskly back toward her neighborhood. He followed again, watching her let herself into the apartment where the light flickered on and 3 small heads appeared at the window. She helped the youngest get dressed, assisted the girl in packing lunchboxes, and kissed Malik's forehead. She tested his temperature, nodded, gave him medicine, brushed his hair back, then walked them 2 blocks to a rusted bus stop bench and waited until the school bus came. Only when the bus pulled away did she head back into the building, where she had 2 hours before her next shift. Started, 2 hours of sleep, maybe. Keanu sat in his car, heart heavy. He had worked with hundreds of store teams across the country. He had seen burnout, poor performance, and legitimate behavior issues, but Lena wasn't any of those. She was a guardian, barely more than a teenager, trying to hold up a family that had no one else. Her exhaustion wasn't weakness, it was the result of trying to keep 3 kids fed, clothed, and safe while the world judged her for moving too slowly. Back at corporate later that day, Keanu made one quiet phone call. "Jill," he told his assistant, "I need everything we have on Lena Brooks. Contact history, job application, anything she listed under emergency info." "You're walking a fine line," she warned. "You sure you want to go there?" "I'm not looking to pry," Keanu said, staring out the window. "I'm trying to make sure we don't destroy someone who's already holding on by a thread." 20 minutes later, his phone buzzed with a text. It was Lena's employee record, legal guardian of 3 minors, Tasha Brooks, age 10, Malik Brooks, age 8, Jordan Brooks, age 5, emergency contact, none, previous address, transitional foster home. That's when it hit him. Keanu sat back, eyes fixed on the words. She had come out of the system 2 years ago after their mother passed away, stepping up not just as a sister but as a parent, as everything. Now she was about to lose the one job keeping that household together. Later that afternoon, Keanu overheard a quiet phone call Lena made to social services, realizing just how close the state was to stepping in, just how close her family was to being split apart. That's when the fear hit him too, because Derek had already made his move, and HR was listening. Keanu had spent his career learning how to read the warning signs on a spreadsheet, in a profit margin, in a customer survey, but none of that prepared him for what he saw on Lena's face during that phone call. Her voice was measured, but her eyes told the truth. Fear, not the kind that panics, but the kind that lives quietly in people who've been through too much to ever let it show. "Yes, I understand the requirements for guardianship," Lena said into the phone. "The children are in school." "Yes, they're healthy. I'm managing." She listened in silence for a long moment. "You're sending someone next week?" "Yes, I'll be ready." When she hung up, her hands were shaking. She pulled a little notebook from her pocket and started writing. Rent $650, feed $180, utilities $95, Malik inhaler $40. Title needed $965, current title $890. A quiet curse, then silence. She stared at the page like it might blink and change on its own. Keanu looked away before she caught him watching. That night, Derek cornered Keanu near the back stockroom, clipboard in hand. "Tomorrow's the day," he said, something too-close-tickly in his voice. 3 write-ups, falling asleep on shift. I caught her nodding again during the 2 p.m. lull. "She's done. I already emailed HR, all I need is to send the final incident." Keanu said nothing. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tell Derek that she wasn't some lazy employee, that she was holding down 2 jobs while raising 3 kids alone, that every eye-roll and snide comment from coworkers was aimed at someone just trying to survive without making a scene. But he didn't say any of that, not yet, because timing mattered, and he still